Hallo zusammen! Today I'm gonna translate Linkin Park's Numb from English to German, and I'm also gonna explain and demonstrate a few linguistic features here and there, especially in my German translation, because this channel is about the German language and culture and what it's all about. So, let's go! Numb was the third release single off of Linkin Park's second album Meteora from 2003. This album holds a very special place in my heart. It was the first album I ever bought myself at the age of 12, next to Fallen by Evanescence, which was also released in the same year, and it basically was an important step for my musical taste and upbringing in general. Being a really passionate music lover, I really enjoy many things about this tune in particular, but let's start with the first verse. Ich bin es leid, so zu sein, wie du mich haben willst. Sich so unzuverlässig zu fühlen, verloren unter der Oberfläche. Weiß nicht, was du von mir erwartest. Unter Druck gesetzt, in deine Fußstapfen zu treten. Of course, my German translation isn't of such a poetic nature in comparison, but that's not the point here anyway. The English I'm tired of would be Ich bin es leid. Literally, I am it suffering. For jemanden or etwas leid sein. To be tired of someone or something. This often gets followed by a subordinate clause introduced by the subjunction das with double S. That, but it can as well be continued by a different form of subordinate clause. In line 2, I basically added the self-reflexive pronoun sich, themselves. Without this addition, I guess you probably wouldn't really know for sure who is basically supposed to feel unzuverlässig, unreliable or faithless. Dropping the subject in line 3 works really well in English, but I'd say it would rather sound clumsy in German. It could also work in a lyrical context, of course, in a way, but it somehow feels more natural in English. If the subject were to be added, it would be Ich, I, right at the start. The last line contains a fixed English phrase which is similar yet a bit different in German. Whereas English speakers would say walking in your shoes, Germans rather focus on the footprints and stepping into them. In die Fußstapfen von jemandem treten. To step into the footprints of someone. Which also works really well metaphorically speaking. In this song's context, it could express a lack of realistic possibility to really be on par with the seeming superior person the lyrical I is referring to and addressing and complaining about. For instance, by saying that the person's footprints are too large to be filled by the lyrical I, or so. Of course, the English you could also be translated formally by using sie, formal form of address, instead of forms of du, informal form of address. But I think the informal form works better here. I really love the minimalistic yet dynamic nature of the song. You have the quiet verses and, really coming down to the lyrics and the singing there. And then you have the powerful hooking chorus, which is, a statement, a strong expressiveness that is being shown here. The song just works so well with little details and little instrumentation in a way even, but it's so expressive at the same time, and that is so cool. In between, the pre-chorus really prepares well for a heavy impact being the chorus, which the listener also gets sucked into by a faded-in guitar feedback. Common and great mechanism, actually, to really draw the listener into a new sequence. Jeder meiner Schritte ist in deinen Augen ein weiterer Fehler. Im Sog gefangen, einfach im Sog gefangen. I chose a few different phrasings in my German translation in comparison to the original first English line. To take a step would often be something like einen Schritt machen, to make a step literally. In this case, I completely dropped the make aspect and just basically said every step of mine, mainly out of aesthetic reasons. It's der Schritt, singular, die Schritte, plural, the step. I changed the expression "it's another mistake to you" to a common German phrasing. In meinen Augen ist ein Fehler. In my eyes is a mistake, which basically resembles the to you. The undertow is der Sog, singular, die Soge, plural. And I love how the song literally sucks you right into the chorus, as I've mentioned before. That's not only a cool lyrical choice, but also a great example how the lyrics and the music really fit in and work together. The chorus goes like this. Ich bin so betäubt or gefühllos geworden. Ich kann dich nicht spüren. Werde so müde, so viel aufmerksamer. Ich werde zu diesem Menschen. Alles, was ich will, ist mehr wie ich zu sein und weniger zu sein wie du. You might have noticed that, but yeah, in line 5 I added the Menschen, because otherwise it would have been ich werde zu diesem, which sounds way stranger in German than it does in English. So yeah, once again one of those cases. Even though it's just a few lines, it's not too easy to translate these phrases language aesthetically, meaning pleasantly. While the first line is still quite literal and direct, of course with the focal adjective numb, betäubt, anesthetized, or gefühllos, feelingless, I've always wondered what the there at the end of line 2 does for the meaning of this chorus, and truth be told, I guess it was mainly included to sort of have a rhyme for where in line 4, but I don't know. Now, I guess in a specifically romantic or erotic situation and context where the addressed person is touching the lyrical I, but the lyrical I doesn't feel anything, any love or even affection or whatever, that really applies better, I guess? Let me put it this way, it certainly makes sense in this context. Maybe that is one possible interpretation. I don't know, what do you think? Line 3 is really literal and direct, but again, leaving out the subject feels stranger in my German translation as opposed to the original English lyrics for some reason, but maybe that's just me. I'm intrigued by the semantic relation between lines 3 and 4, since the lyrical I seems to feel increasingly tired, yet also becomes more aware at the same time. Interesting. Maybe they are questioning their own feelings and why they can't feel any affection or love coming from the addressed person, and instead they get tired and not, affectionate and loving and whatnot. Line 5 again features a conjugated form of the verb to become, which would be translated with zu etwas or zu jemandem werden. To become to something or to someone, basically. As I've touched on before, probably the hardest part of the translation here is this in this line. I could have translated this phrase to something like ich werde zu diesem, but it just really sounds odd and artificial in German. It doesn't work. I've always loved the contrasting expression be more like versus be less like. Not only, when you think about it, do these two lines basically sum up the whole song, they also sound pretty cool because of this recurring phrase. To be more like someone, mehr wie jemand sein. To be less like someone, weniger wie jemand sein. The song really is a concise piece of rock or metal track and really serves well as the last statement on the album. This short and poignant nature also gets underlined by the direct translation from the loud chorus to the quieter second verse without any form of post-chorus whatsoever. Siehst du nicht, dass du mich erdrückst? Hältst zu sehr fest, verengst dich davor, die Kontrolle zu verlieren. Denn alles, was du dachtest, wie ich sein würde, ist vor deinen Augen auseinandergefallen. The verb smothering in line 1 can be translated in multiple fitting ways. Apart from erdrücken, to press to death, literally speaking somewhat, you could also say ersticken, to suffocate, or unterdrücken, to subdue or suppress. The beginning of line 2 is a bit clumsy in my translation. Using a different phrasing overall, I could also have went with du versteifst dich zu sehr darauf. You're becoming too fixated on that. You're focusing too much on that single aspect. In my translation, I went with the verb festhalten, to hold on to, and its separated conjugated form in the second person singular Präsens indicative mode active. Du hältst zu sehr daran fest. You are holding on too tightly to. Lines 3 and 4 highlight how the lyrical I has felt forced into being, acting and living according to the terms of the addressed person, their thoughts, opinions and beliefs, but it also shows that this is over now. I guess in a way this whole statement could be interpreted in both a positive and a negative way. To me, it definitely sheds some hopeful light on the situation, which hasn't eventually led the lyrical I to back down. It's basically the Tom Petty I won't back down moment of Numb. Last but not least, the bridge features this high melodic shouting style which Chester Bennington was famous for, not just that but also that. And that is one of his aspects in style that really impressed me, being 12 years old at the time when this came out, and I was like, whoa, this is Powerful yet melodic, and that is a mixture that I still appreciate to this very day. When it comes to progressive metal and whatnot, as long as it's melodic, it can be as complex, complicated, whatever, layered. I don't mind. I love that. So, great. Just great. Und ich weiß, ich könnte letztendlich auch scheitern. Aber ich weiß, du wärst genau wie ich jemand, der enttäuscht von dir wäre. The first 3 lines are pretty literal translations, with failing being translated to scheitern, but it could also be versagen. The last line was a bit tricky for me since I wasn't and still am not 100% sure if the were just means past tense or if it's indicating a subjunctive context. I went with the latter, but maybe both could work in some way or another. Either way, great line which really gets you thinking and following along what the lyrics really are about. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to share it with others because that is the best promotion you can give to any kind of content creator that is out there. That is the best way to help and to support. So thanks very much for doing that and thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I certainly enjoyed making this. Thanks for watching. I'm your Vlog Dave. Tschüss und bis zum nächsten Mal.